go ahead and tell us who you are and something about your experiences here in the 30s.
Well, my name is Harry Hay, and in the early 30s, I was, among other things, an actor. Let me just show you how these things would go in 1934. Because an awful lot of people say, well, you were aware of gay oppression, of gay oppression. We didn't use the word gay yet.
Right.
We didn't use the word homosexual yet either. You know why we didn't use homosexual? It wasn't in the dictionary yet. And this is something most people don't recognize. We didn't have words for ourselves because they're not in the dictionary and they're not available. They would be known in university circles and certain abstractions. They would be in the penal code, but not so many of us read the penal code that often. So we didn't know about these things.
Was there a place where homosexuals gathered during that period at all?
No.
Nothing like that.
Because after all, you have no way of contacting each other. Don't forget that we are, the first place, we aren't homosexuals yet.
Yeah.
Homosexual is an adjective, not a noun. When it does exist, and it doesn't get into the American dictionaries until just before the Second World War. And it was in the Webster, in the American dictionary, it wasn't there till about 1954. And then only as an adjective, not as a noun. As an adjective, and you have to recognize that what is being talked about this time is there are heterosexuals who have gone perverted. There are heterosexuals who become degenerate. And they perform these nasty acts on Saturday nights behind the bushes in the park. And that's a homosexual act, and it's illegal. And if you got caught the first time, you get 6 months in the county jail. If you got caught the second time, you get sent to Atascadero, which was the state prison. And in the state prison, you were offered two choices of cure. One is castration, and the other one's lobotomy. And don't think we don't know thousands of guys who went that road. We did in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, of people who had been that mutilated by the state. And that was your choice. So therefore, you're dealing with people, and we are still heterosexuals who have become perverted or degenerate. Right. Either one of those two. And this is the word you know about yourself. This is what you hear about in the daytime, on the radio, on TV. You didn't have TV then, but on the radio, but all the newspapers are always talking about that. And if they catch you in any kind of a raid along the line, your name and address appears in the paper. And if your name and address appears in the paper, you lost your job. If you had financing for a car, you lost your financing. You could lose your lodging. You just got wiped out. Amazing. Totally wiped out. So that you're dealing with a form of terror that you guys have no idea about now. And this, we left in it every day. And more importantly than that, we were not even concerned with that. Every day you were concerned with the fact that you were surrounded by blackmailers on either side, who would turn you into the cops, who would turn you into the newspapers, unless you paid up. And I would say half the people that I knew who had jobs paid regularly on their blackmail.
Wow. Did you have a relationship with Will Gear during that time?
Sure.
And how did you conceive of and describe and talk about your relationship with Will?
Well, the point is that we knew that we knew we were in love with each other. And we were in love with each other for quite a long time. But Bill always used to say, among other things, this is interesting. I used to talk about 1933 and 1934, for example, that someday we should all get together and we should actually develop maybe even a union, so that we would find a way by which we could find each other and support each other and give each other solidarity when it needed, and we'd find some way eventually to help get the law changed. This is 1934. Bill said, "You're out of your mind. Well, how could we ever get together? What would we ever talk about? We have nothing in common. All we want to do is have sex with each other. And maybe you could have a love affair, because after all, it's just sex. What do you talk about? You're crazy." Now, Maud Allen, who was one of the great characters, because Bill lived at Mountain View and she did too, and I used to go up and stay with them all the time. She said, "You know, honey, you've got a point. You've got a real good point. And you could someday, you're going to figure out a way by which you get people together." She used to, for instance, say that when she was in New York, for instance, she used to keep couples, guys who were in love with each other and were living together and were starving together, and she used to feed them Sunday morning breakfasts. And one of the pairs that she used to take care of, a couple of guys, one guy's name was Henry Fonda and the other was Archie Leach. And this is back in the days when they were both starving and they couldn't get along. Archie Leach eventually becomes known as Cary Grant. But anyway, she used to feed them breakfast back in 1929, 30, 31, in that period in there. These people all got properly married and had children and all the rest of the stuff. And so I don't know how much of this is I can be blackmailed for or what. But the point is that in that period, but Martha used to say to me on the page, it's a good idea and you should think in those directions, but I think you're going to have to start it yourself because I don't think you're going to get people like Bill to ever understand what you're talking about.
Was there a word that you used at that point? I know you had the general concepts and wanting to focus.
We didn't have a word yet. Right. We talked about ourselves as being that way. There were sometimes we were known as being nervous. I love that. Oh, he's nervous. I used to use that word. He's nervous was the silent star. What was his name? Ramon Navarro was very fond of using nervous. But the words we had for the temperamental was probably the most respectable word we had.